The night sky was an expanse of black, with no stars, no light to guide her. She could feel the cold stones beneath her, sharp and unforgiving. Alone, the small alien girl shivered in the darkness, her frail body clinging to a rock, her tear-streaked face hidden behind her thin arms. She had been abandoned, left to die on a desolate planet, far from the safety of her home. The others had discarded her, too weak, too fragile, too different. Her kind was never meant to survive on such hostile terrain. Yet here she was gasping for breath, clutching at the remnants of her existence. Her hands trembled, her small body shuddered, and she could feel the darkness closing in, not just around her, but inside her as well. Her vision blurred, and the desperation in her heart began to swell. She had known deep down that this would happen. She had heard the whispers before, seen the cold looks in the eyes of the others. She was different, a mistake. A child born of a failed experiment. No one cared for her, not anymore. Her eyes closed, and for a moment she thought it might all end. The endless pain, the loneliness. But then a sound cut through the silence. It wasn't the usual ominous hiss of the wind. No, this was something else, a low hum, like a distant engine. At first, she thought it was a dream, or perhaps a trick of her fragile mind. But then the hum grew louder, closer. She opened her eyes, desperate to see what was coming. And there, standing in the shadows, a figure appeared. A human. She blinked in disbelief. A human? Why would a human be here? What did they want with her? The cold fear returned, but it was different this time. It was tinged with hope, though. Fleeting. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. This human was her last chance. The human knelt down beside her, the glow of his flashlight casting a soft light on his weathered face. His eyes were wide with surprise, disbelief, and something else, compassion. The alien girl recoiled instinctively, her frail body curling tighter into a protective ball, as if she could disappear into the very earth itself. She had seen what humans could do to those they considered weak or inferior. Fear surged in her chest like a choking tide. Yet this human didn't move with aggression. His presence wasn't a threat, it was just different. The human didn't speak immediately. Instead, he watched her, studying her with curiosity, but also, maybe, a trace of concern. The flashlight wavered slightly in his hands, as if he was unsure what to do with this creature he had found. His clothes were torn from the long journey. He had the look of someone who had been through a fight but survived. But more than that, there was something about him that set him apart from others the girl had seen. His eyes were soft-tired, but they held no malice. Slowly, almost hesitantly, the human reached into a bag on his side. He pulled out a small container of water, and with a gentleness she hadn't expected, he set it down between them. The girl stared at it, her throat dry and raw from crying, her instincts urging her to drink, but also warning her to be wary. Trusting others was dangerous, especially for someone like her. She had been betrayed too many times before. But this human, he was offering something she hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. Safety. The human's voice broke through the silence, low and soothing, though she didn't understand his language. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his words heavy with exhaustion, but there was an undeniable kindness in them. "I don't know who you are, but I can't just leave you here." His voice, though foreign, held a warmth she hadn't expected. Something about it stirred the smallest ember of hope deep inside her, a hope she had long ago buried under layers of hurt and fear. Slowly, almost as if testing the waters, the alien girl extended one trembling hand toward the water. She hesitated, then took the container, her tiny fingers wrapping around it, the cold touch of the plastic sending a shiver down her spine. She raised it to her lips, the liquid a gift she had nearly forgotten was possible. It tasted bitter, strange, but it was water that seemed to wash away a part of her pain. As she drank, the human didn't move, his eyes watching her with an intensity that she couldn't quite decipher. But there was no judgment there, no expectation, only care. When she finished, she lowered the container and looked up at him. Her voice, barely more than a whisper, slipped out despite her fear. Why are you helping me?" The human paused, his face softening. "Because it's the right thing to do," he answered simply. There was no grand explanation, no justification. He wasn't looking for anything in return. "Because you deserve a chance." The girl's heart tightened. A chance. She wasn't sure what to make of the words, but something in them resonated deep within her. The warmth of the water and the simplicity of his kindness pierced through the walls she had so carefully built. For the first time since she could remember, she felt something she had thought was long gone. A sense of belonging, however fleeting, however uncertain. Could it really be true? Could this human really care for her? The alien girl met his gaze, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. And for the first time, the world didn't feel so impossibly alone. Asterisk days passed, but the girl didn't leave. She couldn't. The human's camp was simple, barely more than a shelter in the shadow of a vast mountain range, but it was more than she'd had in a long time. She slept beneath a tattered blanket, her frail body wrapped tightly in its warmth. Yet it was the human's presence that brought the true comfort. Every day, he would check on her, offering her more water, more food, even a small, broken piece of technology he had scavenged to pass the time. Sometimes he would sit with her, in silence, his gaze lost in the horizon as if he were contemplating some distant memory or future. The girl didn't know how to explain it, how to tell him that she had never experienced anything like this before. This care, this acceptance. It was a foreign concept to her, one she had never truly believed possible. Each gesture, every small kindness he showed her, chipped away at the thick shell she had hardened around herself. His smile, though rare, was like a ray of sunlight cutting through a storm. It was hesitant at first, as though he didn't quite believe she would respond, but she did. And slowly, ever so slowly, the girl began to trust him. Trust was a fragile thing. The human seemed to understand that, and he didn't rush her. There were no demands, no expectations. He never asked for anything in return. Instead, he gave her space, allowing her to decide for herself if she could find peace in his presence. One evening, as the sky turned from purple to black, the human spoke to her, his voice quiet and filled with something unspoken. "I don't know where you came from or what happened to you, but you don't have to be alone anymore." He was kneeling beside the small fire they had made, his hand outstretched toward her, offering her the warmth of his palm. "I know you've been hurt. I know you've been left to fend for yourself. But that doesn't mean you have to carry it all by yourself anymore." The girl didn't respond at first. She only watched him, her heart a tumult of emotions she couldn't name. Part of her wanted to reach out to him, to take his hand and never let go. But part of her was afraid that this moment of closeness might be a fleeting illusion. She had been abandoned before, cast aside for being weak, for being different. But this human saw her. He saw past the brokenness, past the alien features, the small frame, the terror she tried so desperately to hide. He saw her as something more. It terrified her. What would happen if she let him in? What would happen if she let herself care? The thought of losing someone again was almost too much to bear, but even so, a part of her wanted to try. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't asked for his help. But in his eyes, she saw something that made her question everything she had ever known. Something that made her believe that maybe she wasn't a mistake, that maybe, just maybe, she was worthy of something better than the loneliness she had been condemned to. Slowly, and with a trembling hand, the girl reached toward him. Her fingers brushed against his. It was barely a touch, but it was enough. A spark of something passed between them, a connection born from their shared suffering and newfound hope. The girl's voice, small and tentative, broke the silence. I don't want to be alone anymore. The human's eyes softened. As he squeezed her hand, the quiet promise of comfort in his grip. You're not alone, he said simply, his voice steady, sure. And in that moment, she believed him. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the alien girl felt a thread of connection that wasn't born from fear or desperation, but from something else, something fragile and beautiful. She couldn't explain it. She didn't need to. There was just him, and in his presence she was safe. The days in the shelter began to blend together, a gentle rhythm of quiet moments and unspoken understanding. The girl had never experienced anything like this before. No fighting, no fear, just the calm reassurance of the human's presence. But despite the peace she felt, there was always the weight of something unknown, something waiting to be discovered. And then one morning, that unknown came crashing in. It started with the hum of an engine in the distance. The girl had learned to recognize the sound over the last few days, harsh, mechanical, and steady. But this time, there was something different about it. The human tensed. He stood up quickly, his eyes scanning the horizon, his expression darkening. As the sound grew louder, the girl felt a knot of fear tightening in her chest. She didn't understand what was happening, but her instincts were screaming at her that something was terribly wrong. Stay here, the human said, his voice low, his hand reaching out to stop her from following him. Don't come out unless I say so. The girl's heart raced. She nodded, but she couldn't help herself. She had to know. She crept to the edge of the camp, her body trembling as she peeked through the tall grasses. The sight before her made her blood run cold. A small group of ships appeared on the horizon, their sleek, angular shapes unmistakable. They were not human ships. The insignia on the hulls was foreign, cruel-looking, a symbol she had seen before, in her nightmares, the Zinther. Her people's enemies, the very same ones who had abandoned her, left her to die. They had come for her. The girl's breath caught in her throat, her legs suddenly weak beneath her. She wanted to run, to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The human hadn't noticed yet. He was still staring at the sky as though trying to figure out what to do. But she knew. She knew the Zinther had tracked her down, and with them they would bring nothing but destruction. Her chest tightened. She had hoped foolishly that maybe, just maybe, she could escape the past. But it was impossible. The Zinther would find her. They would find her, and they would destroy everything. A dark wave of terror washed over her, and for a moment, she wished she had never met the human at all. He was in danger now, too. She had brought him into her nightmare, and she couldn't let him suffer because of her. She was about to pull back into the shadows, to hide and let him face whatever fate awaited, when she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was the human. His face was pale, his eyes filled with the understanding she hadn't expected. He had seen them, too. The girl turned to face him, her expression desperate, her body trembling. She wanted to scream, to tell him to leave, to run, but she couldn't. The human's gaze softened, and for the first time since meeting him, she saw a depth of pain in his eyes. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't backing down. Instead, he knelt beside her, his voice gentle. We can't hide from them forever, but we can fight. His words were simple, and yet they pierced through the fear that had been choking her. He wasn't offering her a way out. He wasn't suggesting that they run. He was telling her that they would stand together, no matter what. The girl's heart twisted in her chest. She had never imagined that anyone would choose to fight for her, least of all a human. She had always been alone in this struggle. But now, standing beside this human, the impossible seemed just a little less so. "You don't have to do this," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "I'm nothing. You can leave. You don't have to die because of me." But the human shook his head. "You're not nothing. You're a person, and you deserve to live. I won't let them take you." The weight of his words sank deep into her, breaking through the wall she had built so carefully around her heart. He wasn't just standing by her out of obligation. He was standing by her because he believed she was worth it. For the first time, the girl didn't feel like a mistake. She didn't feel like the broken, abandoned creature the Zinther had made her. She felt human. And for the first time, the choice wasn't hers alone to make. It was theirs. Together, they had a chance. It was small, and it was uncertain. But it was real. ****. The sun had barely risen the next day when the Zinther ships touched down with a low, mechanical rumble. The ground trembled underfoot, as though the very earth was recoiling from their presence. The girl felt the vibration through her bones, a familiar and unwelcome sensation. It was the feeling of imminent danger, the kind she had learned to recognize. From the moment she was born, the Zinther were here. She could hear their harsh voices, their commands barking out in a language she had once understood all too well. The girl felt the weight of it all bearing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. They had found her. The human had stepped forward, eyes locked on the ships as they unloaded their troops. The girl could see the muscle-bound soldiers in their dark, armored suits, moving with the precision of a deadly machine. It was too many of them. Too much to face, even for a human. Her heart sank, her breath catching in her throat. She wanted to run, to flee, to hide from the horror of it all, but there was nowhere to go. No one else to help. It was just the two of them. And that's when the human looked back at her. His face was resolute, a quiet determination burning in his eyes. "We're not running, not this time." His voice was steady, calm, but there was an undeniable fire in his words. He didn't flinch, didn't falter as the Zinther encroached upon their camp. The girl felt a strange twist in her chest. How could he stand so firm? How could he, someone who had never seen war, never fought for survival, be so sure? But it wasn't the firepower that made him resolute. It was the way he had chosen to fight. He wasn't fighting with weapons or violence. He was fighting with something far stronger: resolve, hope. And for the first time, the girl realized that the human wasn't just a stranger. He was someone who understood the weight of survival. He had fought his own battles. He had faced his own darkness. She didn't know how she knew this, but she felt it deep inside her. He was just like her, a survivor, someone who had faced the odds and refused to give up. She wasn't alone in this fight. "Not anymore. What can we do?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling in fear and uncertainty. The human turned to her, his eyes softer now, almost like he was reassuring her that they weren't going to lose. That they couldn't lose. "We're going to fight. But we'll do it on our terms. We'll use what we have." He motioned to the small weapons and tools he had scattered around their shelter, crude but effective in their own right. They weren't much, but they could be enough. It wasn't about winning a war. It was about survival, about showing the Zinther that they were not to be discarded. The girl looked at the human, unsure of how to act, how to even fight. She wasn't strong like the Zinther. She didn't have their viciousness, their ruthlessness, but she had something else. She had her mind. She had the knowledge of the Zinther's tactics, their weaknesses. The human had strength in his body, but she had strength in her heart. Together, they could survive. Together, they could make it through this. The girl wiped away the last of her tears, determination replacing the fear in her chest. "We won't run," she said quietly, but with a fire that matched his. "We'll fight." The human gave her a tight-lipped smile, the kind that spoke of hard-won victories. "That's the spirit." He handed her a small, crude weapon, a knife fashioned from metal scraps he'd found in the wreckage of an old battle. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. The girl took it, her fingers curling around the handle. The weight of it was oddly comforting. "We don't have to win," the human added, his gaze intense. "We just have to make them remember us." The girl nodded, feeling the truth in his words. The Zinther might be stronger. They might have more firepower, more soldiers, more technology, but they didn't have the one thing that humans did. They didn't have the will to fight for each other. And that was all that mattered. As the Zinther marched closer, the girl felt a new strength stirring inside her. She had been abandoned, left to die, but now she was standing tall, side by side with someone who believed in her, in them, and together they would fight. The Zinther soldiers advanced like a wall of death, their massive figures moving in perfect synchrony, their weapons gleaming under the harsh light of the twin suns. The girl could hear their footsteps, the grinding of metal against dirt, the clatter of their armor as they drew closer. They were everywhere now, encircling the camp, cutting off any chance of escape. The air was thick with tension, a sense of inevitability settling in. The girl's heart hammered in her chest, every breath coming too quickly, too shallow. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to fight, not like this. But the human beside her stood unwavering. His stance was steady, his face hard with determination. He wasn't looking at the soldiers, though. He was looking at her. He could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear that had haunted her since the day she was cast aside. And he wasn't going to let it control her. Not now. Not when they had come this far. "Remember," the human said softly, his voice a steady anchor in the storm. "It's not about winning. It's about making them realize that they can't control us. Not anymore." The girl nodded, swallowing hard. She knew what she had to do. She wasn't going to back down, not now, not when she had finally found someone who cared enough to stand beside her. She had been abandoned by her own people, discarded by the very beings who were supposed to protect her. But this human, he saw her. He saw her as something worth saving, and she wasn't going to let that go without a fight. The first soldier stepped forward, towering over them with his weapon raised, ready to strike. But the human didn't flinch. Instead, he moved swiftly, grabbing a crude weapon from the ground, a broken metal rod, and swinging it with precise force, knocking the Zinther soldier off balance. The soldier stumbled back, surprised by the human speed, but quickly regained his footing. He raised his weapon, preparing to strike again, but the human was already moving. He ducked low, avoiding the swing, and lashed out with his weapon, striking the soldier's leg with a bone-shattering crack. The soldier fell, his armor screeching as he hit the ground. The girl's heart raced, her breath coming in sharp, gasping bursts. She had never seen someone move like that, never seen anyone stand against the Zinther with such defiance. It was as though the human had a fire inside him that nothing could extinguish. But the girl wasn't just standing by anymore. She had learned. She had watched the human, and now she was ready. As another soldier lunged at them, she stepped forward, her small figure almost invisible against the backdrop of towering Zinther warriors, but she wasn't afraid. She wasn't going to let them take her. Not again. She raised the knife, the crude weapon that had once seemed so foreign in her hands, and lunged forward, her movements swift and deliberate. The soldier turned just in time to see her, but it was too late. The girl's blade sliced through the air cutting across his armor with a precision that stunned even her. The soldier staggered back, shocked by the force of her attack, but the girl didn't hesitate. She followed through, her heart pounding in her ears, her every movement fueled by the years of suffering and fear that had shaped her. The Zinther soldier crumpled to the ground, his weapon falling from his hands as he tried to grasp at the wound. She stood over him, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling with each desperate breath. The girl didn't feel satisfaction, didn't feel triumph. She felt something different, something strange and new. She felt alive. And in that moment, the Zinther knew they were not dealing with just a victim anymore. They were dealing with a survivor, a fighter. The human caught her eye, a silent understanding passing between them. She had done it. She had taken a stand. Together, they had shown the Zinther that they were not to be underestimated. But the battle wasn't over. More soldiers poured in, their weapons raised, their eyes burning with rage. The girl and the human stood together, back to back, ready to face whatever came next. They had no illusions. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that they had something the Zinther didn't, each other. And in the face of that, nothing else mattered. The battle had raged on for hours. The clash of metal and the crack of weapons filling the air like thunder. The human and the girl fought side by side, their every move in perfect sync, as though they had become one in the chaos. The girl had never imagined she could be capable of this. She had never known such strength, such determination within herself. She had learned from the human his bravery, his refusal to back down, his will to fight for something bigger than himself. But she had also taught him something too. In the moments of desperation, when everything seemed lost, she had shown him what it meant to fight for something worth dying for. They were no longer two individuals in the vast, cold universe. They had become something more. They had become a team. But the battle wasn't over. The Zinther, relentless in their pursuit, were still closing in, their numbers seemingly endless. The human was panting, his strength waning, his movement slower, but he kept pushing forward. The girl, too, was exhausted, her body aching with every movement, and yet neither of them faltered. The fight had become something more than survival. It had become about proving that the Zinther could not break them. That no matter how many times they were beaten down, no matter how many times they were discarded and forgotten, they would rise again. They would rise together. But then, just as it seemed the Zinther might overwhelm them, something unexpected happened. The ground trembled beneath their feet, the roar of engines shaking the air, and a new sound filled the sky. A ship. A human ship. The girl's heart leapt in her chest. It was impossible, but there it was, an ancient warship, its hull battered but still intact, descending from the sky with a thunderous roar. The human's eyes widened with disbelief, but he didn't hesitate. "It's them," he breathed, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "It's the rescue team." The Zinther paused, confusion rippling through their ranks. They had not expected this. The humans' allies had come, just when all seemed lost. The warship landed with a mighty crash, and a door opened, revealing a group of human soldiers. Armed and ready, they rushed forward, charging into the fray, cutting down the Zinther with brutal efficiency. The battle had turned. The tide had shifted. And in that moment, the girl felt a surge of emotion, relief, joy, but also something else, something deeper. The human hadn't just fought for her. He had fought for everyone. He had fought for humanity's values, their unyielding belief, in compassion, in sacrifice, in resilience. In a world where survival often meant betrayal and cruelty, the human had chosen the path of kindness. And in the end, that had made all the difference. The Zinther, now outnumbered and broken, retreated into the distance, their ships lifting into the sky as they fled. The girl watched them go, her heart still racing. She had never imagined this, never believed that this kind of victory was possible. She had thought that she was nothing, that she was just a mistake, a discarded child. But here she was, standing tall, victorious, not because of brute strength, but because of something far more powerful, hope. The human turned to her, his face bloodied but smiling, his eyes alight with something she couldn't quite name. "You did it," he said, his voice soft but full of pride. The girl shook her head, her eyes shining with tears. "We did it. Together." The human smiled, a true, full smile this time, and for the first time since she had crash-landed on this hostile world, the girl felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense of peace she had never known. In that moment, she realized that she wasn't alone. Not anymore. She wasn't the abandoned, discarded creature the universe had thrown away. She was something more. She was human. The girl and the human stood side by side, watching the retreating Zinther ships disappear into the distance. The stars above were clearer now, brighter, and for the first time, the girl believed they were meant to live. Not just survive, live together.